What is going on, everybody? We got Larry Krueger in the building to talk some San Francisco 49ers. I'm very happy to have Larry with us. He was at OTAs last week, got those scouting eyes on all the players, all the rookies, the vets, how the second-year players are making the jump. But before we get into that, Larry, how are you doing today?
Oh man, Brad, thanks for having me back on. I'm loving it. I was down at camp. I felt, I was like, getting that sunburn. I was feeling that sun beating down. I was thinking to myself, I got to get myself a camp hat. Then I'm like,
bucket hats, maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I can go sombrero. It's like I may have to, I may have to really get versatile. I may talk to Mayoko or Barrows or one of those guys on one of those, just those wide brim floppy hats that make sure that you don't get, I can't burn my forehead. But yeah, it was hot, man. It was hot out there, and a lot of the players, it's interesting, were bulked up wearing sweats because many of these players train in the South, the Southeast. It's far stickier and hotter in other parts of the country. And even though it was a hot day for me, they look at the weather in NorCal is kind of cold, so a lot of them kind of will bulk up with sweatshirts and sweat off that many more pounds and kind of get used to a climate they're get back to a climate they're kind of used to.
Get ready for that football weather that's coming around the corner. It's going to get a lot hotter as we get closer to camp too. So I totally hear you. I want to shout out the SDS. I see you guys dropping it in the chat. Drop those bread gangs. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Also, make sure you sub to our guy Larry's channel. I dropped the link in the description. So make sure you show him some love. Hit that sub button. Get our guy to the moon. But in the meantime, Larry, let's talk a little bit about the retirements that have happened recently. And I want to start with the Frank Gore retirement because you've been in this market for a long time and you've been covering this team and you got to cover Frank Gore with the San Francisco 49ers. Just what kind of went through your mind when you were seeing Frank Gore sign his one-day contract with the 49ers yesterday to retire as a member of the 49ers forever? And just like, what was going through your mind when you saw that go down?
He's one of the most amazing football players I've ever seen in my life. He's tore up both knees at Miami and then went on and had this ridiculous, incredibly long career. Guy didn't even wear knee pads. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, just
knee braces,
nothing. Just out there, just doing it. I mean, Frank, and also, when I think about Frank, I think about being in New Orleans after the Super Bowl and the next morning and in the locker room that night after they lost and the next morning seeing him and devastated. The guy played for all the right reasons. He played to win the game. He didn't play for the money. He didn't play for the respect. He played to win. The Super Bowl was everything. He was crushed, like literally crushed. Everybody was disappointed. Frank was crushed by the Ravens beating the 49ers. And it just told me so much about what he's about. And that's who he is to me, is a great competitor, as good a competitor as any. And he did the most with what he was given. I mean, to have the kind of career that he had after having the kind of injuries he had, that alone would be incredible. But to be third on the all-time rush list, I wish he had gotten that Super Bowl. I wish Harbaugh and Roman had handed the ball to Frank instead of throwing the fade.
I was just going to ask you. I was like, what did you think about that last drive?
Oh, it killed me. I mean, how about run Kaepernick, your super athletic quarterback, and on a run pass option
in the corner of the end zone? Very,
run. I would have and I never would have called the timeout. I would have no huddled. I would have no huddled on first down, run, and then I would have no huddled on second down, run. Run Kaepernick on third down. If then on fourth down, maybe then. I'd call a timeout. But I mean, my goodness, that was so mismanaged. And that could have been the ring for Frank right there. That could have been the Super Bowl.
Could have been the ring for Staley. Could have been the ring for Willis. The laundry list of Justin
Kaepernick
Smith
might still be the quarterback.
Oh, my goodness. If
he'd won the ring, are they going to run him out after winning the ring?
Right. And you could even say the same thing about Jimmy Garoppolo back in 2019.
Would Harbaugh still be here?
Right. It's crazy. It's funny that you bring that up because I have a lot of sleepless nights still about that. That one has never left me, that particular game. But the real point is, again, Frank Gore, his importance to the franchise. Again, just the ultimate pro, ultimate competitor, and he's fan favorite. Would you think Frank Gore is a top 5 49er all time? Would you put him into that upper echelon? You
No.
can see the names all behind. I got Rice, I got Joe behind me. There's a lot of names.
Rice. I mean, there's only so many you can have, right? So there's Rice, and there's Joe, and there's Steve, and there's Ronnie.
Yes.
And then, then it's kind of a pick your spot. But what are you gonna do with Charles Haley?
Right.
We gonna not claim Charles Haley? The Niners drafted him, So Charles Haley, look at what he was, and look what he is, as a winner, as a incredible individual. Then there's a whole slew of guys that should be right there, I think, as well, that I think are a little bit above Frank, but still, he's an incredible heart. And there were some ugly moments. There were ugly moments with Frank for sure. I remember standing next to him in the locker room after one game, and you got rookie Carlos Hyde, and people are asking Frank about the fact that he was averaging like 2.6 a carry in the game, and Carlos, will average like 6.5 a carry. And it was all because Carlos was running these gun runs late in the game, when the defense wasn't expecting the run. And so, but Frank actually verbalized it. Frank's like, he had all the easy runs and I had all the hard runs. And he said that. And here's
That's
Carlos.
How you know when you're getting a little emotional.
And then Carlos was looking at him like, uh-oh, what should I say? It's like he didn't know what to say. So, Frank had some moments where he was like, it's like, what? But, come on. Great player. And, Canton bound for sure. Absolutely going to Canton.
Absolutely. And also the 49ers had another retirement yesterday that impacts them right now into OTAs, heading into training camp. Obviously, Alex Mack has hung it up. We've been kind of waiting to hear if that was going to be the case, if he was going to come back, if he was actually going to retire. But we saw the moves happen yesterday, and Alex Mack has officially retired. What is that impact, initially going to be for the 49ers offensive line?
Well, it's funny. We're just thinking about this. It's like, the 49er offensive line, there's a lot of, we don't know what Trey Lance is, but I think we know that Trey Lance has a lot of talent. The 49er offensive line could be anything from one of the best offensive lines in the league to a major reason that they don't win. It's like they have Trent Williams at left tackle, and then Aaron Banks at left guard. We don't know what Aaron Banks is going to be. And Aaron Banks was a second-round pick, but that doesn't mean anything. That means nothing. And we don't know how he's going to play. And then we don't know who's going to be the center. Is it going to be Brunskill? And is Brunskill as good at center as he is at guard? If not, is it going to be Poe? Is it going to be Zakelj? Is it going to be somebody really young like that? Is it going to be Jake Brendel? They like Jake Brendel. And then who's going to be at right guard? Is it going to be Jalen Moore? Is it going to be Zakelj? Zakelj to me looks like a right guard. He looks like a tough run blocking, punch in the mouth, super physical, block you beyond the whistle. He looks like a right guard to me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know what it's. Poe looked good. Burford looked really, really good in this camp, even though he's got some work to do on his body. He's a awesome prospect. You can see that he's real. If they coach him up, he might be a star. He's a tremendous body.
He's got like baseline arms, movement skills, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's already there.
He's long arms, powerful, moves fast. He almost is too light. Like he needs he'd be better, more effective with if he put on 15 pounds. But he's still 310 and fast. Yeah, right now he's like body beautiful at 310, but offensive linemen usually, are more effective if they have a little extra heft.
Oh yeah. Can move those defensive linemen a little bit easier. So I mean, that's good to hear with Burford because I think that's one of the things that you took away from watching him on tape is he just seems like a specimen. He seems like he is kind of built in a lab in a sense where if you can coach him up in the right ways, works on that technique a little bit more, he can be and become refined into a pretty solid player. But the question remains to be seen. That interior offensive line, we really don't know what's going to go on with it, right? It's just there's so many
A lot of questions. Brett, I would say if you made me bet on it, I'd say I'd bet it's a fight between Brunskill and Brendel, and there's a chance that they'll just plug Brendel in and leave Brunskill at right guard,
right.
And then all the young guys sit on the bench. But if I had to say who's my line, how the line will shake out, I think it will ultimately be Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Brunskill at center, Zakel at right guard, and McGlinchey at right tackle. And if McGlinchey's not ready, then maybe you might see Jalen Moore at right tackle.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've been too. I've been really kind of thinking of, because when we look at Alex Mack and we go back to last year in 2020, we look at the offensive line in 2020. It was Trent Williams, Laken Tomlinson, Ornis Grasu at center, Brunskill, and McGlinchey. All they did in 2021 was essentially effectively drop Alex Mack into the same offensive line, and the group transformed. So I look at it from the sense of, especially with Kyle Shanahan, feels like they would benefit from having a more veteran presence as a starter, at least at the center position. Feels like you could maybe hide the guards a little bit more. Again, Brunskill starting in 2020 was his first year as a full-time starter. Wasn't ultra effective, still was kind of getting his footing and all those types of things. So it does feel like, at least from my perspective, it just feels like I would feel more comfortable knowing that we have a somewhat veteran presence at center. But granted, Brunskill, he moved down to center in 2020 and they kicked him back out because it just, it was a really hard position to learn for him in real time in season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But I like that Zakel is he someone that's been standing out, at least from a power standpoint? And again, just the way he's been moving out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nastiness. You can see, if you watch it closely, you can see the nastiness. This guy, in the drills, the two-hand shiver, he delivers it with some real thump.
Some juice there.
Yeah,
there's some juice there. There's some the bull kind of like waving the horns around a little bit.
This guy, there's some anger there. I thought him and Poe showed great. If you say, Poe is another guy. He locks out. He's really strong. He's short, but he's really strong. He's moved, and it makes me wonder if he might, it looks almost like functional strength. The way he's stinking. Now, granted, it's offensive lineman going against offensive linemen more times than not in these drills. So It's not like a big defensive tackle who knows how to play with leverage. It's an offensive lineman who's just going through the rep, Yeah. But Poe looks intriguing. Burford looks long-term like he could be really exciting. But if you said who's of the group, I would say Zakel is going to be the guy who's going to be ready to play. Why? Because so much of what makes an offensive lineman trustworthy is the mental part of the game. And this kid was an academic All-American from Fordham. And he's got this nastiness. So you mix in the nasty and the cerebral, and he's got the physical body to do it right now. He doesn't need to be developed. I would not be surprised if Zakel was the guy who played the most of the young group.
What have you seen from Donovan West? Obviously, we've talked a lot about Donovan West. I would imagine he would have been like a 4th round draft pick, but went undrafted. Sounds like it was some medical issues. Has there been anything that he's shown, at least initially in OTAs, where he could be in competition for the center spot? Or does it feel like, as we stand right now, there's still a little bit of a gap between Sutherland, Brendel, potentially Brunskill? Or do you think he has a potential to compete for the position?
Well, it's really interesting because there's just so many options there. They've got so many different options in the interior. It's like, who do you lean on? Definitely the guys that are in house are going to know more right away. I thought, Sutherland's been there. It's really difficult to say who the who's going to be the leader in the clubhouse.
And there are no pads
line.
either. They're not
There's
hitting.
no pads.
There's no physicality.
Yeah, I mean, I almost, when I think about their line this year, what really stands out to me is that it's going to be way deeper than the lines they've had in the past, and there's going to be great competition. Is as far as how it's going to shake out, it's. I think the one guy that we never talk about is McKivitz, and McKivitz looks pretty good, and he seems like
I'm a
guy
big McKivitz fan.
Yeah, I mean, McKivitz, I think, is a guy that's going to play. He's going to make the roster for sure. Right. So, it's like Sutherland is I think just a guy, to be honest. I don't think
I think he was picked up he's either picked up off a practice squad or picked up from being released from a practice squad.
West to me doesn't quite look like 6'4", 310. He just he doesn't look the part. Like when you watch him,
I saw that at the combine. I saw that up close and personal at the combine. I was like, wow, he looks like just smaller than everyone else.
Yeah, and I guess I got to watch him play from scrimmage, because guys who don't look good walking around doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that because this guy, they list him at 6'4", 310 pounds, and
you're like, you're thinking a big guy.
He doesn't have the big stature, but that also means that he carries a lot of weight from in the midsection, which is a good thing for offensive linemen who are trying to anchor against bull rushers. You got to be able to anchor, and sometimes if you don't see a guy's dimensions, you think, he looks kind of small, but sometimes those are the guys who anchor the best. So you got to kind of see it play out. They gave him some guaranteed money that they didn't give some of their other undrafted guys, to keep him away from other guys, from other teams, I should say. So they obviously have made an investment in him. I think it's wide open. I think the center spot is going to be wide open, and that there's a bunch of, that's kind of the beauty of the O-line this year. They got a good coach, and they've got a great left tackle, and they think they've got their tackles settled with McGlinchey coming back.
Right.
And then I think the rest of it's fluid. I mean, I don't think Banks is like absolute, and I don't, as far as where Brunskill is, I don't think that's set yet. I think the right guard thing's very open. So there was good life in their end of the field, because I think everybody knows there's some spots that are open, and it's all based on production.
So what have you seen from the second-year guys, Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore, so far?
I like Jalen Moore. He moves, a lot. For a guy of that size, he moves really well. He's got a lot of power. He's got good feet. He looks like a guy who can play guard or tackle. I don't think he's a left tackle, but I think he's a suitable right tackle. He might be your powerhouse right guard. I think there's versatility there. I really like Jalen Moore. As far as Banks worked up a lather. So he was like easy. I mean, this guy was really sweating. He's working his way into condition. You know what I mean? I think conditioning has been an issue, and I think it's still kind of an issue. So the nice thing is, though, he was working hard. He's big and physical. He's quick in a short area. And he definitely looked like was moving better than what we saw a year ago. But man, he looked like he had been through a 3.5 hour practice. I mean, he was just drenched. And, he's repositioning his body. He's learning more about the position. They say they have high hopes for him. They drafted him obviously high enough to want to put him out there. It's a big year for him. That's all we can say. I don't think anything's really set, though.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun when those pads get on, because, I'm a big proponent, and, going to training camp last year, I think one of the things that I realized is it's really hard to evaluate to the full extent when they're not actually in pads going full speed against defensive linemen, and really seeing how the run fits look, seeing the leverage, seeing the power. Can they withstand double moves? Can they hold up against the stunts? that just opens the door. I mean, we can evaluate in a sense, when they're going against bags and things like that. You can get an idea of first step quickness, leverage. Again, like you mentioned with Sakel, the ability to punch, you get an idea of some of the power that comes behind those hands. But we're really going to find out in training camp, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I got a super chat here from the man Cap. He says, "You think Shanahan is tired of getting rentals at center and wants to truly develop someone for his offense? What are your odds we sign JC Treader?"
I'll say this about JC Treader. I mean, everybody throws his name out because he has played some good football and there's some good film of JC Treader. But the one thing you got to remember is that these guys, it doesn't last forever. It doesn't go on forever. And the guys if a guy has name recognition, what that also usually means is his body's beat up. And if you dig into JC Treader, and I have over the last couple of weeks, he's battled a bunch of different injuries. He never practiced. His body was breaking down on him last year. So I don't know that, if he's going to try to play or not. And I don't even know if he would pass a physical. But he's a name that a lot of people throw out for sure. And he's a veteran out there with some proven, some pelts on the wall, so to speak. But to me, it's all about his health. Right. And I'll say this: they got some good options in this camp. You're going to like what you see from Poe. You're going to like Zakel. You're going to like what you see out of Jake Brendel. Brendel was pretty physical and getting bigger, stronger, and knows the system. So I think as far as JC Treader and what they've got, and factor in the injuries, the cost, I'm not saying that he wouldn't help. He'd be more of solid, but I don't know if he would last.
Right. And we understand, especially at that center position, injuries have been something that Kyle Shanahan has been dealing with. They gave big money to Weston Richburg. I would say Weston had kind of a mediocre first year, but I think the 2019 season was his second year where he really started picking it up and playing at a high level, but then ultimately got the injury. And then it was Ben Garland. It was a whole bunch of people at center. So I would imagine that Kyle wants to find his center of the future. Maybe he finds it in this camp. Maybe he's on the roster. Who knows? But like you mentioned, Larry, there's a lot of young talent here. I'm excited to see what Poe looks like when the pads come on, because just from watching some of the preliminary clips that have come out from some of the O-line drills, like you could see, like there's the foot speed that Poe has is pretty nice, and he's able to get leverage really well. Again, if you got the speed and the strength behind the stature and the height, if you can make it work to your advantage, it might not be as big of an issue as you maybe would think. So I'm excited to see all those guys. Obviously, the offensive line is going to be a huge point of emphasis moving forward now that Mac has retired. But are there any veterans that stood out from OTAs to you? Maybe second, third year players? Anyone that jumped out from OTAs that made you do a double take, made you maybe reevaluate what you thought of them going into it? Any particular guys like that stood out to you?
I mean, there were a number that stood out. I mean, most of them are new players because I've kind of, understand what they've had with the older players. One of the veteran players that did stand out to me, Jimmy Ward and Hufanga are just, that safety tandem looks terrific. I mean, like those guys might be the strength of the team defensively this year. I mean, Ward is in great shape. Hufanga is getting nothing but better and faster and quicker and more sudden. And I think that could really be a strength of the football team. I think the secondary's overall depth is really impressive. So that's kind of what stood out as far as some of the veterans, Ward and Hufanga. Those guys looked really, really good. And then I think the other thing that stood out were, these young DBs, Quantrez Knight, Samuel Womack, Tariq Castro Fields. I mean, those guys all look like they can play. I mean, Womack has got a strut. He really thinks he's good, and he's very physically confident. Yeah, I mean, oh my God, he's strutting around like he's the best player on the field. And he's you got to see him. He wears 26. He's 5'9", so that's the one thing. But other than 5'9", this guy is physically dominant. He's fast. He's strong. Quantrez Knight also, I thought kind of showed well for himself out there. He was moving around really, you noticed him. They also have a linebacker. They added 3 undrafted free agent linebackers that are all pretty interesting. Jeremiah Gemmel from Carolina, Saguna Luby from San Diego State, and Marcelino McCrary Ball. And Marcelino McCrary Ball is about 6 feet, about 215 pounds. But, man, he's instinctive, and he's fun to watch. And then Luby runs sub 4.5, and you can kind of see that speed a little bit. And they also have Curtis Robinson, the Stanford kid, back, and he's so they're loaded they're very deep at linebacker. They're very deep in the secondary. They've got a bunch of D linemen. I think they've taken a step back, to be honest, on the D line. Now, granted, we didn't see Bosa, and I didn't see Kinlaw, but they lost DJ Jones. They lost Contavious Street. They lost Arden Key. We didn't see Drake Jackson out there either. So maybe that factored in.
Wasn't Drake Jackson off to the side? Were they mentioning that he's maybe nursing an injury, or is that maybe precautionary?
It's hard to say because there were like Azeez Al-Shaair practice on the side. Some guys were doing some things on the side, but they just didn't practice. Ty Davis Price walked right by me. He had no limp at all, but he was in sweats and he didn't practice. I just think they're just extra safe and extra concerned. I mean, you want to make sure that you get to week 1 fully healthy. So there's no reason to push anybody in a June mini camp or a June OTA session. So
I think the 49ers lost 3 players last OTAs. I think they lost Tarvarius Moore, Justin School, and Jeffrey Wilson in OTAs. So it does feel like they have kind of, and you can maybe speak more to it, does it feel like it's a lot lighter in regards to the way they're going about their practice? I saw one practice session where they didn't even have helmets on. Does it just feel like they're, like you said, they're just trying to get through this period and just get healthy to training camp?
Well, I mean, just looking at the guys who didn't, there's no Bosa, there was no Warner, there was no Trent Williams, there was no Ty Davis Price, there was no Drake Jackson, no Azeez, no Greenlaw. No, I mean, and 15 more guys. So it sounds like they took like anybody that had real value and just said, you know what, don't even play. Because I think, just
we know what you guys are going to give us. Just
I mean, there were guys who weren't there. Then there were guys who were there who weren't practicing. And I'm sure they have a whole breakdown of exactly why. But more than anything, it's like, don't lose anybody. It's really about taking inventory for camp. And, just who are you going to invite to camp? How are they looking? Are you introduced? They got a bunch of new offensive coaches. So their offensive football is so much about coordination, as you know. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of communication that has to happen between the offensive staff and the offensive players. And then this is the first time that you get a chance to see the rookies and the vets kind of blended, and you get a chance to see how the dynamic of the team and each individual unit's going to come together. And then also as a front office, you're looking at where are we thin? Where could we add a guy here or there? Overall, I think they look pretty good in a lot of spots. They're pretty deep at running back, pretty deep at wide receiver. So
what's your
deep
first
on the D line?
Yeah. What's your first impression of kind of both rookie Danny Gray and Ray McLeod? I'm very interested in his prospects as a returner, and or if Deebo Samuel returns and doesn't really want to mess around too much with that wide back role, maybe Ray fills into there. But I am curious to see what your thoughts are on those 2 particular wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Ray McLeod, I think, is going to play a huge role this year. I really do. I mean, and Danny Gray, Gray is just explosive. I mean, he wasn't out there at the OTA, this last OTA, but in the previous OTA, he had, demonstrated his ridiculous speed. I mean, he's going to have a huge impact. Everybody's going to love Danny Gray because he's going to run off the coverage. He's going to create a ton more space. And when Ayuk and Kittle and Debo, and when these guys get to that second level, or when they beat their man, there's going to be nothing but green grass. And they're going to sit there and go, why do we have so much green grass? Because you have Danny Gray, and he runs, 4.33, and he legitimately moves that fast. And so you got to honor that. And that's, as you know, just enough space to make it seem like it's wide open. So right. I think, offensive football is about creating space, but it's really about speed. And this obsession with speed is all based on how much space can you create for your offense. And Gray's going to create a ton of that. Absolutely. I think Danny Gray is going to be I think he's the guy that makes the biggest impact of all the guys, all the additions in the offseason. Danny Gray, I think, will make a big impact, but also Ray McLeod. And McLeod, his key is he can't fumble, because he fumbled, I think, 6 times last year, or a lot. I mean, it wasn't, right. Maybe it wasn't 6, but he's got to take care of the football. But I loved what I saw from Ray McLeod. The catch radius, plucks the ball with his hands, will go low, will go high, will work to the ball. Very, stop and start quickness and run after the catch ability and explosive traits. I mean, he's nice. He's nice. And he's going to be a nice addition because, as you know, they've got all these other guys, right? They don't need to lean on Ray McLeod. They don't need to lean on Danny Gray. But now you've got 2 real playmakers that you can just add in. And that just makes them a lot more difficult to defend.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that wide receiver room. Obviously, the hope is that Deebo Samuel comes back and he's ready to go. You got Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings heading into year 3, I believe, hoping for a big step forward with him as well. But then you add Ray McLeod. You got Danny Gray. What about those undrafted free agent wide receivers? Any of those guys pop out at you? Because I know both you and I talked about, I think, Taysier Mack and Tay Martin as being potential guys who could stand out. Did you see anything from those two?
Yeah, well, the guy and Taysier Mack, not as much. He did make 1 catch, and he looks, he's a solidly built receiver. He didn't stand out to me as much, but Tay Martin really did. Tay Martin was wearing number 83. He's got stop and start quickness. He's got body control. He's got ball skills. He's been well coached. He's been in 2 different programs. He plucks the ball with his hands. He looks very professional at the catch point. He's like one of these guys that he's not 40-yard dash fast, but he's so quick in and out of his breaks, and his hands are so strong and so quick, and his confidence, because he's had success at the collegiate level, is so high, and you can just see it. You can see his movements. You can see how he expects to catch the ball. He is going to be a very good player. Tay Martin is a good player, I'll tell you. Now, I don't know if when he gets out on the field, if in training camp and the pads, how will it all translate? He didn't run a great 40 time. Can he separate? But man, as far as the quickness in and out of the breaks, the confidence, the hands, the ball skills, the ability to not just catch it, but catch it and put it away. And, he's got a lot to like. I really like Tay Martin. And then as far as the other guy you asked about was, who's the other?
Taysier Mack.
You Taysier Mack, but the guy you didn't ask about is Marcus Johnson. Marcus Johnson from Tennessee. They played at Texas. He's about 6'1", about 205, 210. He's got some explosive capability. He's a deep play guy. He showed himself well. He wore number 6. And so to me, that if you look at it, this is how it shakes out. Ayuk, Debo, Juwan Jennings, McLeod, Danny Gray. Those 5 guys are going to make the team. So then it's about a 6 receiver battle, and it's going to come down to Tay Martin, Taysier Mack, and then these other guys, Keyshawn Johnson, Austin Mack, Malik Turner, and Marcus Johnson. And that's a good spot to be in, because some teams keep 5. and that means all those guys get cut. So I think ultimately it's going to be Tay Martin against Marcus Johnson for one receiver spot. And you know what? They're going to want to keep them both. And who knows? They may, I'll say this. I think Tay Martin's going to show too much in the preseason, and you won't be able to sneak him through waivers. And so they'll either lose him or they'll carry 6 and he'll make the team.
Tay Martin, obviously, from being able, scouring the internet for clips and all that types of things. I think when rookie minicamp was going on, we were doing a live show in the middle of rookie minicamp, and they were putting out clips. And one of the beat reporters put out a clip. I think it started out with Danny Gray running a little kind of release off the line of scrimmage. It was just, individual drills. They're just working their release off the line of scrimmage. And Gray goes first. And we know how fast Gray is, the 4.33 burner. We talk about his speed quite a bit. But number 2 up in line was Tay Martin, and he just shot out of a cannon. And I was like, I get it. It's against a bag. Like, there's no pads. It is what it is. But I was like, I was just wowed by the explosion that he just showed in that little vacuum. So Tay Martin, again, we talked about him when we were doing our undrafted free agent show. He's someone that I'm kind of rooting for. And Marcus Johnson, like you talked about, coming over from Tennessee, and he's been, I think, with multiple teams, but he shows promise as a guy who, like you've mentioned, he's going to go attack the football when it's in the air. He shows an ability to have immense balance in the air, get his feet down, high pointed, do it all. So I agree. I think that number 6 position is going to be a fun battle in training camp. But those two, I think I'm rooting for one of those to make it. We'll see. I kind of agree with you, at least from a perception standpoint. It's Tay Martin. Of course, we'll get to see it all in training camp. But overall, pretty excited about that. I want to talk to you about some of the running backs. I don't know if Justin's in here. He is the leader of the Jordan Mason Hive, as what we like to call it. Tell me a little bit about Jordan Mason, the undrafted free agent running back out of Georgia Tech. Has he been someone that's been standing out in training camp? I know Anthony Lynn spoke glowingly of him. What have you think or thought of Jordan Mason so far?
I love him. I think he's terrific. He's 5'11", he's 230, 225, let's say, and he's quick. He carries his pads well. The guy, if you watch him at Georgia Tech, the same guy that I would just watch at OTAs, he looked the same and wearing pads. I mean, he's quick. He can run away from guys. He's got great footwork. He's got great contact balance, and he made a play out in the flat and catch the ball out of the backfield. He's going to contend for a roster spot. It's funny. Jeff Wilson came into the interview room, Brad, after the practice, and he's talking, and I'm looking at Jeff Wilson, and I'm thinking to myself, what question would I like to ask him? And the question I like to ask him was a question I didn't want to ask him, because it's like, it may cost him his job. I mean, the room is stacked. Right. You got Mitchell. Most teams keep 5 backs. Let's count. Mitchell, 1. Juszczyk, 2. Ty Davis-Price, 3. Jeff Wilson, 4. Trey Sermon, 5. Jermichael Hasty looked good in this camp, 6. Jordan Mason, 7. They have 7 good backs. 7. And they're not keeping 7. So somebody's either getting cut, getting traded, getting hurt. But they got 7 NFL backs, and Jordan Mason is an NFL back. I mean, it's uncanny that, under Shanahan, both the dad and the son, how their ability to find these running backs. And this guy, it's not like this guy played at, Slippery Rock or something. This guy played in the ACC.
He didn't play in North Texas like Jeff Wilson.
Right.
He played in the SEC against SEC competition.
But this guy, they found him at the North Texas, credit to them. But this guy played in the ACC. And if you watch him, he doesn't give you a big target, but he runs with great body lean. He's got great balance, and he's pretty quick. And he runs behind his pads. He knows how to set up his blocks. Catches the ball out of the backfield. They're faster backs. There's bigger backs. I mean, they're better. this guy looks pretty good. Definitely looks like an NFL back. So they're loaded there, and they really are. I mean, I think Mitchell, Price, Wilson, Sermon, Mason, and Hasty would all be considered, in my opinion, suitable NFL starting running backs. And they've got 6 of them.
Right. Health is wealth, right? That's the key factor with that particular room, because we thought the 49ers were actually pretty deep going into the year last year with Mostert, Mitchell, Sermon, Jeff, and by the time week 2 came around, we were looking for replacements quickly. So that's a good problem to have. It's good to hear that Jordan Mason is standing out. It does kind of feel like Hasty might be the odd guy out in that particular situation, but we'll find out. Again, another solid training camp battle. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the quarterback position. What have you seen from Trey Lance, Nate Sudfeld, Brock Purdy? Of course, let's start with Trey Lance. What have you seen so far in OTAs? Anything standing out? Maybe something that maybe he needs to work on? Anything like that?
Well, everybody has a different approach to OTAs. To me, I always feel like, you can make yourself crazy worrying about things at OTAs. You gotta remember what it is.
Yes,
you got to
evaluate, but there's like a perception in which you have to evaluate it through.
I always look at it as you can only do bad. You can only do good things at OTAs. You can't do anything bad. The only thing bad you can do at OTAs is be fat and out of shape.
Right.
If you're fat and out of shape, that's bad.
Right.
Your job is, they didn't have a lot of fat and out of shape guys. I didn't really see anybody that I thought was like, wow. There was one year I was standing next to Aaron Lynch, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, he looks like about 315 pounds. And then I interviewed him, and he's like, yeah, my wife's pregnant, and I've been eating a lot with her.
I got the baby weight.
Seriously, this is a guy who played at like 260, 265.
Right.
He weighed like 295 at minicamp. Wow, he was huge. He was huge. And it was like, wow, look at this guy. But then, by training camp, he had lost a lot of that. So it's like, that's the other thing. You can't overreact to any of the minicamp. I just think that, I only look for the basically good things. Guys can look good at minicamp. I don't think anybody can look bad. So minicamp stats don't mean anything. And as I said before, minicamp, as but just for some people, minicamp is about taking inventory on who's going to training camp and getting the wheels going on teaching your system and getting your guys acclimated and communicating. But it's really just about taking inventory. So like any concern, or people were concerned, Ayuk didn't catch any balls and Jennings, and don't worry about those guys. They know what they got in those guys. They got to find out about Tay Martin and Taysir Mack and all these guys. They got to find out about them and decide who they want them in camp, or if the other guys whose agents are calling every day saying, my guy should be in camp, are better than the guy you got. So that there's a lot of that going on. So, but as far as Trey, I thought Trey looks good. He looked a little lethargic. It was a hot day. He looked like he was kind of pulling himself through it a little bit. The accuracy on the short stuff and the intermediate stuff was fine. It wasn't incredible, but it wasn't awful. The accuracy down the field was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. He wasn't really throwing a lot of passes to guys that he's got a lot of reps with. Mm-hmm. I thought, he demonstrated. D'Amico said he zipped it by us, and he's throwing it with tremendous velocity. He seems to be throwing more spirals than a year ago, but there were still a couple passes that had the high speed wobble, which is a difficult pass to throw, difficult ball to catch, I should say. But we weren't seeing lots of drops. He seemed to be pretty in tune. He's definitely taking charge. He seems really popular among his teammates. There was good energy with the pace of practice, but they were kind of hot. It seemed like he was kind of dragging through May. But once again, I don't put a whole lot of credence into it. I didn't notice any real difference in his mechanics or his footwork. To me, though, he seemed like he was more comfortable with just the overall knowledge. I mean, he just seemed more comfortable. He seemed like he knew where he was going. He seen the economy of movement, let's just say. You know, he looked pretty good. The other guys don't look like much. I mean, nothing against Sudfeld or Purdy, but they don't make the kind of throws that make none of those guys have an arm that make you go, wow. You know, Trey's arm stands out against Purdy and against Sudfeld. Sudfeld's got the biggest stature. He's tall, 6'5", 6'6", and he throws maybe a little bit more accurate than the other guys. Purdy has maybe a little bit better arm than Mullins, and he looks real comfortable throwing the ball. He actually probably looked pretty accurate as well, but nothing like that would make you go, wow, like this guy's got real upside. They don't have those kinds of throwers. Like these guys don't have the kind of arm or skills to really in any way threaten to be starters. I think I don't see an NFL starter from Sudfeld or from Purdy. So they're a little thin there, to be honest. It would be interesting to see if they have another quarterback in mind. If sometimes they bring a fourth guy in, is there going to be a fourth guy?
I was going to ask, because typically they have 4 quarterbacks in training camp. They only have 3 OTAs right now, right?
Right. They had Manny Wilkins at the rookie thing from Arizona State, I think.
Yeah.
And he's a big-bodied guy, 6'5". I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. I think, you know, Purdy is going to be a very seasoned – he's got played a lot of football, right? So he's going to be a very seasoned rookie quarterback. So I think he'll help in the film study because he has played a lot of football, and I think that will help Trey. And obviously Trey and Sudfeld have a good relationship, and obviously you get Greasy there in his first go-around as a coach. So it's an interesting room. I would like it more if there were that 35-year-old, vet who's been there, done it, and can verbalize it and everything. But I think it's probably a pretty good quarterback room.
Yeah, that's good to hear. With the new, and you kind of alluded to it, with some of the new coaching changes on the offensive side, which are quite a bit, tight ends coach, running back coach, quarterback coach, a lot of obviously new OC, or I guess no OC. It's going back to Kyle, it sounds like. Have you noticed any shift in the offense? Like, let's say, are they passing to running backs maybe a little bit more than they have in the past with maybe influence from Anthony Lynn? Or do you maybe anticipate that could be a change that's coming? Do you anticipate any changes that are coming to kind of the way the scheme is set up until this point? Or is it going to be standard outside zone, maybe a little bit more inside runs, maybe a little bit more gap scheme? What are your kind of thoughts with maybe the way the scheme could evolve with some of the new coaching staff?
Well, it's interesting. Well, obviously you're trying to play to your, if you got a good coaching staff, and I think they do, you're going to play to the skill, the strengths of your players. I mean, and Ty Davis Price looks like the kind of player that might be more of a quick hitter, maybe a few more traps and quick hitters, like a guy who can run between the tackles and kind of show that explosiveness to get to that second level. I could see them using him differently than, let's say, a Trey Sermon. But I just think overall what I see is I didn't see anything that would make me think that they would change dramatically on what they've done. I think Shanahan has an offense that he likes to run, and I think he'll make his offensive assistants adapt to what he does more than adapting to what they bring to the table. So I think it will be largely similar to what you've seen, except I just think that the competition on every level of their offense, from the receiver competition to the offensive line competition to the running back competition. And we didn't even mention the tight end competition. I think one of the battles in camp is going to be for who's the second tight end. They brought in Tyler Kroft from the Jets. They also, they've got Charlie Warner. They still have Ross Dwelly. Jordan Matthews has gotten stronger. They brought in the kid from Wisconsin, Fumagalli.
Yeah.
They still have Tanner Hudson. I just think that's a wide open battle. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me Croft won it. I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me Fumagalli won it, I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me Jordan Matthews won it, I would. It's like it's a wide open deal for the second tight end. So I just think overall they're deeper. They're deeper at receiver. They're deeper on the line. They're deeper at running back. And if they trade Jimmy, I guess they're not as deep at quarterback, and they're putting it on Trey. But I think Trey's ready to roll. I think he's ready to roll. I think he's ready to play. It's time to rip off the Band-Aid and put him out there. As I said, I would like it more if they had like a veteran who was there. And maybe, I don't know how the quarterback thing is going to go. Shanahan always leaves out the option of, we could keep Jimmy. They've insisted they're not going to waive Jimmy. Right. Is it possible that Jimmy has his market is proven at this point that it's not there, and that he takes some kind of a pay cut to stay? And will they offer him a pay cut to stay? Because, if you said, what do they need? What's like their number one need? Well, their number one need is probably another reliable quarterback. That's probably their number one need. And that's what Jimmy Garoppolo is, but you don't want him at $25 million,
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's obviously taken up a big portion of the cap space and ability to maybe add other players if they had the opportunity. Do you think there would be another kind of weird year per se if they did keep Jimmy and kind of as a backup? Do you think that would cause any locker room? I don't want to say issues, because I think football players, when it's all said and done, football rules all, and the best man typically wins. But do you think there could be any maybe issue in that regard, kind of having the guy that the locker room stands behind coming in as the backup potentially for an entire year?
I think there is no one answer to that, Brad, because it's all totally predicated on the two guys and the team and the situation. But since we're talking about two guys that we know and the situation is this one, I don't think it's a problem. I really don't. I think Jimmy would handle it professionally. I think Trey would handle it professionally. I know the overwhelming sentiment is that, oh man, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't even have one, and oh my God, you're inviting the circus to town, and all the comparisons and this and that, But you know what? At the end of the day, having two quarterbacks, is probably if you said, what do they need to potentially compete for a Super Bowl? I would say, looking at their roster, I would say I would say a quarterback. They need a quarterback. They need a quarterback who's going to do it. Now, last year they had Jimmy and they had Trey. Right. Now, this year they're going to have Trey and Sudfeld, or Trey and Purdy.
He was hurt a lot of the year too. He had
was hurt
finger issue, knee sprains, so they could potentially have to rely on two quarterbacks throughout the season. So, the
Jimmy thing's not outrageous that he could be here. I know it's like it seems like, what? Come on, they're gonna move him.
We have off-season fatigue as fans talking about it.
I think everybody wants to see him moved at this point, just for closure, right? Let's just move on. Can we just get beyond this? But if you're really, let's just say Trey Lance this could go any number of ways, Brad. Let's say Trey Lance looks great in camp, and then the preseason starts. He looks great, and then guess what? The regular season starts, and he looks great, and it's all up and away. Trey, and nobody has a single doubt about Trey. He looks great. They're winning games. Trey. Oh, Trey got hurt, and now he's going to be out 6 weeks. Well, if you have Garoppolo, then you've got a chance to still win the Super Bowl, because you've got a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Trey Lance, and you got Garoppolo who you can win games with in the meantime. If you don't, your season could go down the drain because Nate Sudfeld is not good enough. And that they get an awful lot of talent on their roster when you look at it top to bottom, to have the whole season ruined because Nate Sudfeld wasn't good enough. So I don't know. I'm not saying that I wouldn't trade Jimmy, but if Jimmy's willing to take a lot less, man, that might be worth doing. And I think Trey can handle it, and I think Jimmy can handle it, and I think this team could handle the distraction of two quarterbacks. Oh no!
No,
Oh my God! No!
We have 2 quarterbacks.
Say it ain't so. I mean, we all want closure, but you know what?
I hear you.
The more we're looking at this thing, the more I'm thinking, you know what? I could see it. It could work out. I mean, I'd still rather take the pick if you could get it, but if you're not getting a pick and you can work out the money, I think the personality thing could work out.
I mean, I hear you there, because that is something that, I've been thinking about quietly in the back of my head. With, again, Trey Lance suffering the injuries last year, again, the broken index finger, the knee sprain, I would imagine Kyle is going to have a healthy dose of Trey Lance running the football, whether it's quarterback power. Again, I don't love the quarterback power personally, but I do love the option of having zone read as something that the 49ers can do. And I would hope they would do it, because I think Kyle's talked about it before, wanting to play 11 on 11 football, making the defenses account for the quarterback. It doesn't mean you have to be super run heavy from the quarterback position, but at least threatening a defense with the ability to potentially hand it off or bring it in and bust around the corner is something that I would like to see. But we also know we did a film breakdown, I think, was it earlier this week, on Trey Lance versus the Texans. We hopped into the all 22 for the first time since I think we did the original breakdown. And there was a lot of promising things. Again, you still see a lot of the things that he needs to work on. But one of the things was he was getting rocked. Like, he was taking hits head on. He had 2 plays back to back where Justin Reed just laid his shoulder into him and just dropped him to the turf. So there is a realm of possibility where maybe Trey could get dinged up. And as you alluded to, there's tons of talent on that roster, whether it's Trent, Juice, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, the running back depth that the 49ers have. You look at all the stars on the defensive side of the football. You look at the depth, which is going to translate to better special teams performances, most likely. So they have the 3 phases set up. But like you said, if things get derailed from an injury at the quarterback position, that's really all it takes, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you say, what are the big questions for the Niners? Okay, they got a question as how's that O-line going to come together? That's a big, major question. Yep. The second question is, are they good enough at quarterback, not just starter, but at the backup? Because, as you said, Trey could easily go down, and then all of a sudden you're leaning on Sudfeld. So those, to me, O-line, how's it coming together, and Trey, and not just Trey, but who's going to play if Trey gets hurt? Those are the biggest questions on the offense. On the defense, I'm a little concerned with their defensive front. Not the depth. They got great depth, but just the top tier guys got to play at the top tier. That's Bosa, Kinlaw, Armstead, Drake Jackson. Those guys have got to play like starters. If those guys play like starters, this could be a really good defense. Why? Because the linebacking core is fast and deep, and the secondary is really good at safety, kind of thin, but really, really deep at corner. So I think they're, in a lot of ways, if you told me that Kinlaw is going to come of age, that Drake Jackson is going to be terrific, and that the O-line is going to be worked out, yeah, I think the 49ers, despite the youth and inexperience of Lance, are a Super Bowl contender.
I mean, there's a lot of talent there, and I hear your points too, because obviously we got to see Kinlaw be healthy. He's been dealing with injuries for consecutive years, so obviously just want to see him get out there. Drake Jackson, a little bit raw, but tons of traits and a ceiling through the roof. So we just got to see it all together. Obviously, Eric Armstead's going to anchor that group on the interior as well. What have you seen from Charvarius Ward up until this point? Again, I haven't seen too much come out of camp on him. I don't know if you were able to. I don't know what his kind of rotation has been, if he's been running out with the starters. I would imagine he was. But any first impressions on Charvarius Ward Essentially the big signing from free agency.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't practicing the day that I was there, so I don't have a lot to say about how he's looked, and I won't just make it up. But as far as their corners, I mean, so you got Charvarius Ward, who I think in his prime, good size, good speed, a definite starting caliber corner. Then you have Jason Verrett, that's 2. You got Ambry Thomas, that's 3. Yeah, you got Dante Johnson, who can play the corner, that's 4. And then you got Diamador Lenore, that's 5. Tariq Castro Fields is 6. Mosley, 7. Womack looked great, that's 8. Denard, that's 9. I mean, they legitimately have 9 NFL caliber corners. So how it will shake out, who's going to be the best? I mean, I thought Womack looked really good, and I don't know if I mentioned Quantrez Knight. I'm not sure if I mentioned him. Maybe they get 10. Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about some some great depth on the corner. I'm really eager to see this summer is who's going to be the guys behind Ward and Hufanga. So if you had an injury there at safety, George Odom was making some plays in the mini camp. Shanahan talked up Tarvarius Moore. Taylor Hawkins, the San Diego State kid's trying to convert from corner to safety. And then Leon O'Neal is guaranteed he's going to make the team. He's got some issues in coverage going back to A&M, but Quantrez Knight's in that mix. I mean, they've got some good depth. They get good depth in the secondary. They get great depth at linebacker. They get great depth on really all 3 levels of their defense. It's just a matter of who's going to emerge as the number ones on their defensive front and in their secondary.
Right. And those are all very valid. I'm very interested with, Darqueze Dennard kind of emerging as the starting nickel, at least so far in OTAs, obviously. I would imagine these spots are going to be open competitions. I wouldn't say anything is necessarily locked in outside the veterans or guys that we know are going to come in and start because that's what they're paid to do. But again, that nickel cornerback spot up for grabs with K1 out. Darqueze getting the first crack at it. Who knows if Diamador is going to, have an emergence in his second year in the scheme, but it just feels like training camp is going to be a really good time in the sense of just getting back to football and competition overall. And I think you would probably agree that just competition brings out the best in football players. Watching that guy in front of you, maybe make a couple more plays, you're like, I got to step my game up. I got to match that. I got to be better than that. And it feels like the 49ers have that at nearly every position. And it just feels like, iron sharpens iron. It's going to be a fun training camp, it feels like.
Yeah, and back to the Jimmy thing for a second. If they did bring in Jimmy, that would increase the competition at quarterback. I mean, you know what? In some ways, if you look at I think it was a great point by you as far as the depth here is almost guaranteeing that you're going to see fierce competitive battles all throughout camp at virtually every position: running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, safety, corner. All those spots. Only really at quarterback is there a clear delineation between there's Trey, and then there's going to be Sudfeld, and then there's going to be Purdy, and then it's going to 1, 2, 3. That's really the only thing that's kind of on paper looks to be decided, where almost seems like it's fitting if Garoppolo were in camp, because you know what, the rest of the roster is going to be competing their butt off. Why not have Trey and Jimmy do the same?
You feel pretty comfortable with the depth that they have and heading into training camp with the way they're set, other than the kind of quarterback position that we talked about, potentially bringing in another quarterback, whether that's Jimmy, whether it's someone else. Do you envision the 49ers making a signing, making a trade, going after maybe filling one of these holes by trying to get someone off someone else's roster? Or are you feeling pretty good about what you're seeing out of not only the starters, but the depth across the entire team?
I guess if you told me that they signed a DB because they're seemingly like trying to throw a bunch of numbers at it, or a tight end, I could see that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if there was a veteran tight end that they wanted to bring in, maybe if there was a veteran defensive back that they really liked, I could see them signing him. I mean, there's been talk about Julio Jones. I don't see that. I mean, they too many good receivers in camp right now, and they wouldn't block their young guys. I think, every spot is really, the offensive line, I think, is really, really deep. The backups are going to be, they might be young, but I think there's going to be great competition in camp. The running back depth is really, really good. It's a big year for Javon Kinlaw. It really is. Big year for Javon. He's a first round pick. He's got to play like it, and he's got a ton of talent, just a ton of talent. So I'm really eager to see Javon Kinlaw. I'm really eager to see Hufanga kind of taking the next step at strong safety. But yeah, if you said, hey, you can go watch, you can watch anything at practice in training camp, what do you want to watch? I want to watch the receivers and the corners, because the DBs and the receivers, because there's just a lot of bodies there, and I think the competition, I think there's jobs available at both spots if you play well enough.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait till the pads come on. I'm super, super excited about that. Are you going to be out at OTAs coming up next week?
Yeah, Tuesday I'm going down, and it's great to put your eyes on it. You get a much better idea when you're actually seeing practice, even though the practices don't really amount to much.
Right.
Just to see the players interact with each other, to see them move on the field. I'm always looking for that confident swagger, because when you're in shape, there's minicamp has two looks. It's that look of I'm dragging. I'm out of shape. And then there's that guy who's
like they're playing at altitude damn near. Like,
there's the guys who are just dragging in like, oh man, I should have done more. Milk was a bad choice.
Very cool.
And then there's the, like the Samuel Womacs and the Quantrez Knights, who are just like, it's like, hey man, I cannot be beat.
Been here.
Yeah. I cannot be defeated. I am the guy up in here, and this is the way it's going down. And I don't care if I'm on an NFL field for the first time. I'm cocky. I'm confident. I have a belief in myself. And so there were some examples like that. And definitely Womack stood out to me.
Pretty excited about that, because we need some dogs in that nickel spot. I think K1 was one of those guys who was a stud for the 49ers. I think since he showed up in 2017, at one point he was considered one of the best nickel cornerbacks in the league. So if they can strike gold with Womack, Diamador, someone, but I like that. I think that's a great point about what OTAs are. You're just trying to get an idea, kind of like pull traits. It's like a baseline traits pull. Like you get to see them with your eyes. Again, the body language, because you get to see all these players interact. So you get to see who stands out, who kind of like fades off into the background. You kind of get that who's the alpha, who's just the grinder, is just going to put his nose down and work, who's the guy who's going to be all loud, hyping everyone up. So that's what OTAs, I think, is probably pretty good for. It's just you get a good baseline of who these guys are in between the white lines from that standpoint, right? You just get a feel for who they are.
Yeah. I mean, football is football because of, the pads and the hitting, and without it, it's hard to really evaluate it. But if you've been to enough of these camps, you get to see the trend, the trends through the years. And, what you really want to see is you want to see guys in shape, playing with a lot of life, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, rooting each other on. You want to see a little team bonding. They're coming together. And then also you want to see what rookies, these, for the rookies, might as well be the Super Bowl. They're stepping on a field with guys that they watched on TV. Yeah. It's like, hey, I watched Deebo Samuel on TV. I watched George Kittle on TV. Now I'm sharing the huddle. So it's like, I better be on my A game. And so it's incredible. Sometimes it's a really neat dynamic, but ultimately we can make our thoughts on who look good and this and that. And I've been fooled before at minicamp for sure, but training camp is training camp is when it starts to be for real, because some guys, when they put on the pads, aren't quite as explosive or fast. Other guys don't lose anything and they're just as fast. So it's, and the great thing with the 49ers is they brought in a lot of competition at all their key spots. They had a need in the secondary. There's a bunch of new secondary guys. Got a need on the O-line. There's a bunch of new offensive linemen. And, not all of them will pan out, but enough. They've got a good enough numbers to make you think that if just a decent percentage pan out, they're going to have one of the NFL's better rosters again.
Definitely. Absolutely. I'm excited for it. And again, I'm right there with you, man. I just can't wait till the pads come on. That was the biggest thing that I took away from training camp last year, is training camp non-padded versus training camp padded. It's just a completely different vibe, totally the way they go about it. The offensive line and defensive line like break out, and you're like, oh, you get to see who's standing out and who's falling behind when those pads come on and people start hitting it. It really makes a huge difference. But Justin has a question. He wants to know, what kind of vibe does Jordan Mason give off? Is he walking around with the strut like he belongs, or is he just more put the nose down and get the work done?
Well, I think he's almost all running backs have to have an incredible belief in themselves. And this guy plays with a lot of confidence. He's a bigger guy. The contact doesn't seem like it bothers him. Guys kind of fall off of him. You can't really arm tackle him. He showed some quickness. He showed some competitiveness. He's shown decent hands out at practice where he's caught the ball naturally. What really stands out to me is the contact balance and the quickness at roughly 225, 230. So, the NFL, it's nice. There's a lot of little backs. It's hard to find good backs that are 215 to 230. And you need those guys. You need bigger backs. And that's the one thing with Elijah Mitchell being he's a nice back, but he's kind of a smaller back. So, it's nice to have, Ty Davis Price. It's nice to have Trey Sermon. I think you're going to like Jordan Mason. It's a really a nice group. I mean, this guy caught it naturally, but then if you watch the Tech film, he has a number of really, really impressive runs. So, and he did it against some good defenses in the ACC. So I'm really eager to see Jordan Mason come the preseason games.
Absolutely. I know Justin's hyped about that. He's trying to get all the Jordan Mason content he can get. But Larry, thank you so much for kind of bringing us inside OTAs a little bit, giving us your scouting eye on some of these players. Obviously, we haven't been able to get a whole bunch of information out of it. So it's been fantastic for you hopping on here, man, and really sharing your insight. I really appreciate it.
Well, Brad, I got nothing but respect for you and the channel and what you're built and the way you go about it. So keep it rolling, man. Onward and upward, and go Niners. And I'll be out at training camp all summer long. We'll be putting up stuff on the Krueger show on my channel and doing some live streams, hopefully talking more football with guys like yourself and just chopping it up and getting us closer, bringing all this stuff to the fans. And not everybody can go to training camp. I consider it absolute delight and a pleasure to go to training camp and cover it and be your eyes and ears. And even all those years I've been doing the radio, because of the shows and the schedule, I've never really had a time to go to camp every day like I will this summer. And I'm looking forward to it, because when you go to camp every day, you see it differently, and you get a vibe for how the team's coming together. And so I'm really looking forward to having that vantage point and then bringing that access right to my Krueger Show channel, and hopefully bringing those observations to the Niner fans that I know want to know more about their team and are fired up for the Trey Lance era.
Absolutely, man. This was great. You guys can follow Larry. Make sure you go to the description in this video smash that link. Go give Larry a sub. Make sure on your way you hit that like button as well on the video, and then go make sure that you ingest all the Larry content that's coming up, because this man is working over there on his channel. So make sure, whether you're you're doing much more than just 49ers. You're doing
Giants, Warriors, post game. Yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff. But Giants too. We're doing post game Giants. We're doing post game on the Warrior playoff games. We're doing, we're covering all three sports. If you're a Bay Area sports fan, but the Niners is the biggest portion of the Bay Area sports audience for sure. So it's probably going to be a higher percentage Niners than Warriors and Giants. But yeah, if you're a Giant fan, if you're a Warrior fan, we'll do stuff there leading into the NBA draft. I got some cool live streams planned and just a lot of cool stuff in the weeks ahead.
Absolutely. So SDS, make sure you go follow along with Larry. He's going to be putting out good content. Of course, you're going to be back at OTAs on Tuesday. So make sure you tap in with Larry. Might have to get you back next week too, Larry.
Anytime, man.
What's going on.
Dude, anytime you want.
Dude, I appreciate it, as always, hopping on. It's been a blast. Love talking football with you, man. So appreciate everyone for tapping in. That's going to be it for us today. I hope you guys have a happy Friday. And again, make sure you go follow the guy Larry on all the channels. Where can they follow you on social media as well?
At Sports Larry K on Twitter, and I think that's also the deal on Instagram. I've got a Facebook deal as well. I'm not sure exactly I don't have the my address down, but I'm on Facebook. Just look me up, and then on Twitter at Sports Larry K, and of course the Krueger Show on YouTube. Loving it, doing it for about a little bit under 2 months now, and it's going great, and just having a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, though. And, this is more of a personal question. What did you think about the Warriors game last night?
Man, I actually predicted they would lose that game because I just thought that Boston played their series with Miami to the end. And you've seen this when the team that has to run, it's like the Niners at the end of the year. They had to run through the tape. They couldn't rest. So they were sharp. And the teams that have to run through the tape and have to play the full season, they go into the playoffs in a sharp mode. The Celtics series was extended with the Heat, and so I thought they had a little edge mentally going into game one. They wound up taking game one. I think Warriors will still come back. They'll win game two. They'll win game three. And I think Golden State ultimately gets it done. I'm saying in 6, but it may be 7. But I like Golden State still.
It's going to be a good series, man. And I think you made a good point. Boston kind of got, they had to go down to the wire against Miami. So they're ready. They were ready for that punch, those punches that were thrown to them. And it's actually almost like Golden State had to be like, oh, wow, they're sticking around more than we thought. They're not dying off like we thought they would. So it's going to be a great series. I had to ask. I wanted to know what you thought.
Boston just rained down threes. That's not going to happen again. I mean, my goodness, Al Horford and come on, and they're just not going to happen that way again. I am a little worried because there is no GP2. Gary Payton's probably not coming back. He was icing the elbow. It doesn't seem like he's going to be ready to contribute. That's going to hurt Golden State. But Golden State's deeper, better, more experienced. I think it will show by the time the series is over.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Larry, I appreciate it. As always, again, remember, everyone go follow Larry, get those subs up. But until next time, I appreciate you all. We're out of here. You guys have a great rest of your Friday and hope you have a good weekend. And we'll be